All right, I think we're live.
Okay, we should get going. Okay, can you share your screen, Vaishnavi?
Yeah, I think it's already shared. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay. Okay, cool. So let's get going. Welcome and hello to everybody. This is Robin. This is episode 3 of our webinar series called The Humans of Testing. And this one is interestingly very timely about the topic. 28th November, as we know, is the Black Friday. I have been a big fan, bought a lot of stuff during the Black Friday sale. But as a QA, it has mostly been a nightmare at most of my engagements. So we've got Vaishnavi today from the Salesforce team helping us decode how to have zero downtime Black Fridays and what is the Salesforce scale test playbook. So that's where we are today. Let's jump right into it. Thank you, Vaishnavi. Quick introductions. My name is Robin. I'm the co-founder and CEO at TestZeus. I'm an open source contributor, international speaker at conferences such as Dreamforce and Trailblazer DX. And I've also authored a book called The Ultimate Selenium WebDriver for Test Automation. At TestZeus, we built the world's first Salesforce testing agent and are currently scaling across India, US, UK, Europe, and other regions in our customer base. That's a brief about me. On to Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Robin. Um, I don't have such a fantastic list of achievements yet, but I'm a product manager at Salesforce. I manage the product called Scale Test, which we will be primarily talking about. Been with Salesforce for around 3.5 years now, and based in San Francisco. Really excited to talk to you all about all our innovations that we're building in the testing phase, especially in scale and performance space. That I Let's get going. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So today, the reason we're here today is because the teams, the companies are moving at a very fast pace to deliver an agentic enterprise. The pressure is on all of us. Like you can see it too, right? Like how the speed of innovation is the expectations to innovate much faster has grown at every level in every phase of the industry. So 79% of our IT professionals, they say that the leadership is increasingly pressuring them to implement AI. And AI in production can be very tricky. We've seen that. It's a lot of new technologies, and we want to build that as a part of our existing systems without breaking anything. And imagine doing that at a peak scale, right? But today, let's talk about our peak events because we're talking about Black Friday. And as you can see here, each industry has its own peak event, and that's why. During every event, it's important to have that scale confidence because without that scale confidence, you might run into business disruption, bad user experience, and a lot of other issues that you don't want your business to go through. So, starting with travel and hospitality, there is a lot of Thanksgiving travel. So, TTH should also, travel and hospitality sectors should also consider scale testing, especially for Thanksgiving and Christmas season. Financial services, there's a busy financial period. Anytime before, like tax returns and tax filings. Today our main focus is going to be about Black Friday, which is like a retail nightmare if you don't scale test for it, right? Your holiday season kicks off, everybody's trying to buy presents for Christmas or get some things on a sale. So all the retail companies are gearing up towards Black Friday to ensure peak availability and reliability. Similarly, you can see all the other industries have their own peak events. For example, entertainment and media, there might be some Super Bowl or some kind of Thanksgiving events that might be streaming on like Hulu or any other streaming platforms, right? They also should be ready for your Thanksgiving and like seasonal events. With that, as we were talking about all these amazing events and how businesses are gearing up for it, we also see a lot of roadblocks getting in the way. So there's a lot of lack of realistic test data. There's some technical debt that we need to make sure that we're taking care of. And sometimes if you don't take care of your like data governance and like other policies that you have, you might risk breaches and fines. And overall, there's a lot of broken ALM processes that lead to errors and downtime. So let's talk about the solution landscape today. We have a lot of partners for your functional space, functional testing, integration testing, and we have a lot of other partners for scale testing and performance testing. And testing at all stages is important. You start with your functional testing, your integration testing, end-to-end testing, and then you move to performance at scale. So you start simulating that production load and running those load tests to see how your systems would behave at a very high scale that you might expect only during certain events. So today we have like our JMeter, load runner, blaze meter, and test juice, and also scale test. So now the reason we're talking about scale test today, as I mentioned, you've seen a lot of other logos in the previous slide, but why do you need scale test specifically, right? Today we have a full copy sandbox. This is your largest sandbox environment, and it will help you go up to 100 to 120 requests per second. Requests per second are nothing but they're the measure of which your platform load is generated, like your XHRs, your API calls, anything that hits the platform, we count it as a request. So you can go up to 100 to 120 requests per second. This is great for your functional testing, your end to end testing, but not your scale testing beyond a certain limit because it's just not like your production org. Your production is built very differently, it belongs on a different infrastructure. So you don't get the same kind of parity in terms of your hardware, the infrastructure. So that's where scale test comes in. You add scale test to your full copy sandbox. Now we help you turbocharge that environment to your production scale. So recently, a customer has tested up to 27,000 requests per second because that's the scale they were operating at. That's the scale their production was running at certain points. So we help them get that infrastructure in the sandbox, provision that to them temporarily for the scale test days that they booked, and they were able to hit that peak scale by generating that load. And once again, the reason to generate that load is to figure out what happens, what are some of the systems that might break, what are some of the issues that you can fix and optimize before you go live and expect that scale.
Yeah, I'll just ask a dumb question, Vaishnavi. Very candidly speaking, for a very long time, I used to think that Salesforce is a platform, and why do we need to do performance testing? The platform should just like handle it, wing it when it comes to performance testing. And when you're
Yeah.
talking about, let's say, the RPS,
Mhm.
right? As an admin, as a business analyst, as a QA on that team, what does it mean for me? Can you give me an example of what do these 120 requests or 20,000 requests actually mean?
Sure, definitely, Robin. Great question. And that's definitely a great question. And most asked question. After all, they're like, it's Salesforce's responsibility. You guys have to scale up to everything that we put on the platform. And
Yeah.
it's nothing is infinitely scalable. You know that. Infrastructure is limited, and we are on a multi-tenant platform. Salesforce is multi-tenant architecture. So even if things are scalable beyond a certain point, we should also make sure that we're not the noisy neighbor. We're not creating trouble to overall availability and reliability of that instance that Salesforce manages. So that is the reason why we need to understand what our true scale is. That I'll talk about the second part of the answer soon, but understanding first step into understanding what our scale means can be done through RPS. It's just like how we measure our height in feet and inches. That's how we measure scale at Salesforce, which is through RPS. So um, that way when customers ask us like, hey, it's your responsibility, I'm like, yeah, it is our responsibility, but it's also your responsibility too, because you're writing a lot of code. Salesforce is highly customizable. If you write one bad piece of code and it's like, stuck in a for loop or something, it's making some expensive triggers, or some like it's taking a lot of
Yeah.
DBC time. All of that is something that you're creating for your custom integrations that might just be slowing down your operations. So
Hmm.
you're the one who's creating the code, you're the one who's executing it, you're the one facing the bad performance. So we're still not saying it's entirely your responsibility. We're doing everything we can to help support that scale and infrastructure. We're saying, why don't you write scalable code from the get go so you don't have to worry about it in production when things start breaking? You pull in all your QA and your developers and you get on the bridges for hours trying to fix it. It just causes business disruption to you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I have been in one of those war rooms and command centers. Yeah, not a good place. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what we want to avoid. We want to avoid any disruption to your existing business processes. And by making this like an insurance policy, just test in advance, figure out what's going wrong, fix it, so you don't have to deal with it in production.
Okay, love it. Okay, love it how you mentioned insurance policy. Thank you.
Of course. And in terms of requests per second, it could be like each request per second is different. So a customer having a certain a login flow or a checkout flow, a Commerce Cloud customer can do a checkout flow. That checkout flow might have a lot of different things. Like it might have some triggers, some APIs, some updates. So a lot of these actions are being like triggered while the checkout flow is happening. So what we want the customers to do is run a checkout flow and just use our features to understand what is the RPS that is generating, because each of the customer's checkout flow can be very unique and different. They might be making different kind of operations. So it is for us to understand, normalize what is the scale that they're running at. We ask them to measure in RPS and give us that information, because based on that number, we understand how much infrastructure to provision to them in terms of database and core app and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So, as I mentioned, scale test will help you turbocharge your sandbox. That is, we take your existing full copy sandbox on Hyperforce and we upgrade it with your production like configurations that you need. So, you're able to hit that scale. But that's not just it. We have a lot of other features in the test management and like test automation space. Another cool feature that only scale test can offer is we understand your production hotspots, because we have that knowledge native to Salesforce. We help you convert those hotspots into test use cases. A lot of customers come to us and ask, hey, I don't know where to start scale testing. Like, I think everything's fine. And then we love to show this page to them and say, these are all the things that are not fine. And these are all the things you can start modeling your test after. So it just gives you a quick view into your production org to see, here are your most used triggers, most used or slowest pages, lightning components, URLs, APIs, and all of that, to help them understand where to begin building your test use cases. On top of that, we also ask customers to run trials. This is one of the most common things customers miss. They directly, when they start thinking about scale tests, they directly jump into 1,000 users, 2,000 users. But running a simple 20 to 30 user test to verify the sanity of your test, get a functional verification in, make sure your data is flowing the way you want it to, that is really important. So we ask them to run a trial before booking a scale test day. And by booking a scale test day, we mean booking a day on the calendar for you to get that production like upgrade.
Okay, very interesting. What I love over here is around the playwright and JMeter importing the test cases. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Robin. So the reason we've come up with that is customers were also asking, hey, can we also use your load generators to generate the loads? Especially the newer customers, right? They just want a simplified UI, simplified experience. They were like, okay, we can bring you our JMeter playwright scripts because they're open source. They're very easy to create. Customers are looking at that right now for scale specific tests. So they bring their JMeter playwright scripts, their data files, the user files. They put all of that in a metadata in their GitHub. The reason we ask them to upload to GitHub is because we don't want to store any of their sensitive. Obviously, nothing, no test data should be sensitive, but in case they don't want to like share the data with us, that's why we ask them to put it in their GitHub repo. And only at the time of execution, we access them to run the specific loads on their sandbox environments.
Very interesting. Okay, very cool. I'm pretty sure Shriyansh, my co-founder, is listening to this, and as we discussed, manifesting that we can get the playwright tests up and running on TestZeus and which can be directly imported to scale test.
Absolutely, yeah, and nothing like it, because a lot of our customers are also, they're all one of the biggest feedback pieces of feedback I get from customers is, I don't want to look at anything. I just want to click one button and my entire scale test is executed, and I get like a list of recommendations that I need to act on. So I'm sure like our partnership will um, make take us one step closer to that vision.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Thank you.
And speaking of no all clicks, no code, we also have agentic monitoring and debugging. So our scale agent, we're calling it Agent Force for Scale. This is also in pilot, and it will help you proactively monitor test health with real time dashboards. So the scale agent will understand, hey, your test is not performing well. Here are some of your recent spikes. Here's what you can do. It also tells you if your test has passed or failed. So you can analyze and maybe stop your test or do some kind of corrective actions based on that. Awesome. So, before we jump into some of the other features more in detail, I wanted to give you a quick run through of what scale testing journey even looks like. So, before we even ask customers to scale test, we always tell them, don't look for testing yet. Look at your production today, identify what's going wrong, like optimize your existing code for scale. Any anti patterns you see, any issues that you see in your present application, fix them using our products Scale Center and Apex Guru, and they're both free and they're both available for customers to use today. So just do a first scan of check using those products. And then beyond that, now if you have some new pieces of code or if you're going live, you're migrating or you have a peak event like Black Friday once again, you then start looking at scale testing for that particular event. So you figure out what are your hotspots or your frequent touch points in your business flows. And then you figure out what kind of testing methodology you want to take. Do you want to use JMeet or Playwright or any other scripting or workload building tools? So you set up your test data. Your test data, do you want to seed it? Do you want to mask it? Or do you already have the data set up, right? How much volume of data is? And you record and configure your scripts, you put them on your GitHub repo, all these artifacts, you schedule your tests, you run your trials, make sure things are working right, and then you generate your high scale loads, you monitor them from a client side and server side perspective. Once again, scale test also gives you this list of recommendations. Here's what went well with your test, here's what didn't go well, and then it gives you recommendations on code improvements. And once again, this cycle continues. You test at an increased load until you want to hit that target.
Yeah, I'll pause you and I'll ask like a tangential question. While
Mhm.
all of these are technical preparations in my head as an engineer, very excited. Yeah, we should look at Apex Guru. We should set this up. Where are my playwright scripts,
Yeah.
right? But I think from a leadership perspective, right, there's a certain mindset shift which needs to happen before somebody decides that they really want to go about doing a scale test.
Mhm.
How would you know pull that mindset shift, or what are the metrics and KPIs which leadership should be looking at as an outcome of this exercise?
Yeah, definitely, Robin. I think this is one of the biggest things that we've had to do with scale test. As you mentioned, like technically we've been doing all this innovation, but even on the business side, I feel like we are launching a movement of this proactive monitoring, proactive attention to availability and reliability, right? So customers often come to us when after they go through something in their production, after something goes wrong, like they have a very bad performing set of
Yeah,
pages that didn't function well.
yeah,
Now what we do is we go ahead, before all these events, do a proactive outreach to these accounts, and we show them a test plan creation, because that is a great tool to help them understand, here are your hotspots that you need to test for, and we give them the test plan, in fact. And they still don't buy it. They're still like, hey, I don't know, maybe it's fine, like maybe I'll still go to production and I'll like look at my alerts and my monitoring, and it should be fine. And then we tell them, we look at like the previous step ones, the previous like key events or something, and then we go with like data driven approach, saying, here are all these things that timed out, here are all the governor limits, here are all the rollouts you hit. To avoid all of these next time, you need to scale test. And another reason why we're investing very heavily in our test automation is because customers, as I mentioned, they're moving at a rapid pace. They don't have dedicated time and effort that they want to put into scale testing when they're not fully bought into the vision. So first thing is fixing that vision, like helping them understand why you need to scale test, why you need to invest your resources into it. Second thing is reducing the friction to scale test by providing all this test automation. So it's easier. When it's easier and faster, they buy into the vision easily. and they test more often. But once they've tested, right, one good thing, one good success story for scale testers and entire product is once they've tested, they always come back. They're like, okay, we understand the value, we want to test more. Let's get more scale test days, or let's start looking at more dates.
Yeah, I think that is very insightful. Reminds me of this war story. So I used to work with an e-commerce customer, and they had one of these like large format sales. They did not realize that they required performance testing or scale testing, as you highlighted. But then, being in e-commerce, they had a lot of empty carts and dropouts in checkout, and they were processing around, I think, 100,000 requests or orders per minute. So at that scale, even a $2 drop is like 200,000 lost in revenue right away. So I think those are some of the metrics which I have seen. Loved your answer that it's a movement, it's not just a product. And then I'm pretty sure once people see the results, they would keep on coming back.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
of course. All right, so now I just want to dig deeper into what our features are about. So, as I mentioned, in planning your tests, we show you your front end and server side hotspots, and we you can use trial accuracy checker. This will help you run small scale tests and verify it with your production baseline. And if customers are testing for something new, you don't have a production baseline, so you can either set your new baseline by running a smaller test, and you can use your RPS estimator to extrapolate what your test RPS would be. And the reason we ask for this RPS information is very important because we decide the kind of infrastructure we want to provide based on your, like sometimes customers don't have production. So what does production scale really mean to them, right? So with this kind of test information, we also make sure that you have enough infrastructure and capacity needed for your production as well. And next, as we talked about executing and monitoring your tests, we help you with workload generation if you bring Playwright or JMeter based workloads. And we are working towards low code script creation, where we have a new script recorder plugin that records your UI flows and it gives you a Playwright script that you can edit as you see fit and upload to your GitHub. And you also get end-to-end performance visibility by capturing critical client-side metrics like EPT via Playwright load. We also show screenshots of the errors. We have a results tree and a lot more debugging, and all the artifacts post-test you can download from Playwright and JMeter. And once again, on the server side, we also show some other telemetry, like have you hit any governor limits, any throttles, and specific debugging for more granular execution control. All right. So now a scale agent, as I mentioned, this is your AI copilot for scale testing, and this is also in pilot right now. So this is once again for guided test execution and monitoring. Everything that we've built so far is based on foundational customer feedback that we've been continuously getting. So a lot of customers, we've had to jump on like bridges with them to understand what's going wrong during a test. Figuring out what needs to be done, which team needs to be looped in, and now with the goodness of Agentforce that Salesforce is completely pivoting towards, we have gotten the opportunity to leverage it for scale test as well. So we help you understand when a test is going wrong, what are the outcomes, what are some of the issues that you can fix, and also automate the root cause diagnosis. So you don't have to pull in like two, three different teams to understand what's going wrong. You're also notified on what the issue is and along with its actionable recommendations. So it also helps you figure out which scale center investigation to run, summarizes it for you in a seamless guided workflow. So you don't have to worry about, do I have enough support during my testing? We're right there with you with Agentforce with Scale.
Okay, I'll maybe pause there. Maybe it's covered in further slides. But a question which popped up in my head, Vaishnavi, was that a lot of times scale testing or performance testing, right, relies on a lot of data. So how do you simulate production like data, or how do you generate or synthesize that data?
Yeah, that is one of our biggest asks. Once again, Robin, you're like asking all relevant questions. So today we do not have a specific data seeding or data masking tool specific to scale test, but we do have our platform products, data mask and data seed, that they can use to generate that synthetic data. And we're also looking towards building a data model recommendation where we'll show them you need to create these many accounts, these many users. We give them the schema of it so they can simply import that into our data mask or data seed, or they can use it open source data seeding tools, whatever they prefer. But we will give them the outcome. This is what your data shape should look like, and they can go forward and create it.
Okay, interesting that you mentioned open source. Do like any recommendations there, or we can just look up, open source data generation tools?
Yeah, Snowfakery has been really good. We've been suggesting Snowfakery to a lot of our customers. In fact, we've had hands on projects with some of our biggest customers. We had to simulate millions of records, and Snowfakery could do it. We've also made some open source contributions to it. So that's a
Wow,
great open source tool to consider. Yeah,
awesome. Thank you. Thank you for both the answer and open source contributions.
of course, of course.
Yeah.
All right. And once again, beyond testing, right, the main value you get from testing is your analysis and what are your next steps. So for that, we have Scale Center and Apex Guru. With Scale Center, you can look into your request volume, your database times, errors, logins to locate any spikes and anomalies. And when you see certain spikes, you can simply double click on them to get into further analysis like database, row logs, integrations, reports, list views. It's very comprehensive, and it's very, very intensive for you. You find out everything that's wrong, everything that's suboptimal in terms of scale and performance, with recommendations to optimize. Now, Apex Guru is all about your AI powered code recommendations. So it scans your code base, runs it through our LLM model to understand what are some of the anti patterns and hotspots in your current Apex code, and you get code recommendations. It shows you like the bad piece of code on the left side. It also gives you a copyable right way of writing that code, so it's very powerful for developers. Especially, they can just quickly run an Apex Guru analysis and see where can we optimize for scale. They also show you expensive methods and unused classes. So, all the top methods that consume high CPU, and you also get how to optimize for them. And great news, Apex Guru is now available within Code Analyzer where the developers live. So, they can quickly do a scan right there and see what they're writing is scalable or not.
Okay. I do have one question over here. As a developer, right? I think when somebody's planning this out, or maybe me and my architect are working on this project that hey, we want to really plan this out and get this executed. What are the common pieces which you've seen people miss out totally, or they realize after the scale testing day that oh, we should have done that one thing as well.
Yeah, I think I've called this out, and I will call it out again because it's one of the most important things. Running a sanity test and fixing the issues before you go to a higher scale is very important. I think customers just get carried away with, like, oh, we need to make sure it's working for 100,000 logins, and they forget
Yeah.
about what happens at 1,000 logins. There's some really simple things that you need to fix that occur a lot more frequently. Like, you're always thinking about the peak event, you don't forget you forget about what might happen at a slightly elevated event, right? And
Hmm.
some things start breaking even at that scale. So I would say, if you don't have the time and effort to scale test for your peak, at least scale test for your medium scale, what you're expecting a lot more often. And most important thing is, fix your issues as you go to a higher scale. It has to be done in an iterative fashion, not just one test and analyzing the results. And another thing I would like to call out is, sometimes customers miss all the paths. We see that test coverage is low because they're only focused on, okay, my checkout, as I mentioned, we're talking about commerce customers. So, and
Yeah.
the theme is Black Friday. So my checkout flow needs to work. I'll do that, but they might not test the payment integration. They might miss
Hmm.
some integrations, or they might not test the end-to-end flow. They might miss some branches to some of the other external sources. So figuring out the journey is also like really equally critical.
Yeah, I think very interestingly you mentioned like integrations to to third-party systems, maybe an SAP, maybe a payments gateway, so on and so forth, right? Does Scale Test Center also cover those end-to-end journeys? If yes, how do we do that?
No, we're limited to our Salesforce platform, so they can either simulate the other side of test using external testing providers because they might be on different infrastructure. We don't have control over that, like in terms of metrics or upgrading that or anything. So you can either stub your request at the Salesforce boundary at the API endpoint, or you can like do an end-to-end joint load test, whichever one the
Okay.
business prefers.
Interesting. That also, sparks this other question in my head, Vaishnavi, that at our Dreamforce booth this year, and even the conversations after that, a lot of people have actually asked us that how can we do, performance testing or scale testing for, let's say, flows or those kinds of things, right? Because I used to think that again, flows is something which people will use in a very simplistic fashion. But now that I have seen these, like, I don't know, dinosaur kind of flows,
Yeah.
even I'm afraid. So, how do we cover them, or we should just leave them aside?
No, definitely not, Robin. We do support testing flows, and we have a specific scale center report just for flows.
Okay.
So customers have like the visibility and like the ability to test and analyze for flows. But as I mentioned, like anything that goes beyond the Salesforce boundary, they need to configure like how the data, is flowing and just figure out the scripts. Maybe they use like an open source scripting tool that is common for both infrastructures. So it really depends on like how they want to design and conduct the tests and what are their SLAs for it.
Hmm. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. And I'll just stop with my questions and then let you get back to the flow of presentation. But then, maybe working with customers, Vaishnavi, what are some of the biggest bugs or defects that you've seen when people are testing for scale?
Yeah, I think the number one thing I see is Rolocks. Customers don't
Oh,
even have,
okay.
they already have Rolocks. Like I've never seen a customer with zero Rolocks,
Yeah.
especially like the large ones. So optimizing for Rolock before you test and keeping an eye out for them is important. Governor limits are also very critical. I've seen a lot of customers hit various governor limits, sometimes login issues because of some misconfigured tests and throttles if a customer is a higher scale or they're not executing something correctly, they run into throttles to ensure that overall availability still is up. So these are some of the things I've seen. Page.
Any fun stories? Again, like it's holiday theme. Any fun stories that you can think of?
I think one of the stories from our customers was they had so many users come into that platform. The landing page, they were like, we're not so sure. And we all of us thought, hey, it's a very simple landing page and it doesn't look very complex. I don't think there'd be any like issues like timeouts or something. But they had some integrations and like some triggers that were expensive that we didn't see. And as I mentioned, one of the integrations was failing. They didn't even notice that. With scale test, they figured out all these roadblocks. But the funny part was, towards the end, they had to create like a waiting room for the landing page.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was really interesting because I didn't even realize like you need to create like wait rooms for like
Yeah.
entering a simple website. But the scale was so high, so huge, especially for that one particular day, that they had to just, especially when it's like a peak event, they had to like route the users to different pages to bring them back. It felt like we're very similar to the physical world where we have
Yeah,
like
exactly.
restaurants
Standing outside a
you can
Best Buy
call
or
in.
standing outside a Target. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So,
interesting.
but it was really fun to work with them on that because we wouldn't have known that, some very small things that the QA teams might overlook might just be some business stopping. So that's why we're
Hmm.
like, always trust the metrics.
Yeah.
It's like human empowered by agents. That's our theme for next year. So always trust the agents, but you are in the loop. You're making
Yeah.
decisions. You're the one to finally act on them, but they give you things that you don't even see.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you for that story, Vaishnavi.
Of course. Yeah, just I think I'll end the presentation with a roadmap. So, as I mentioned, we have all these amazing pilots. If any of you, any of your customers, they want to sign up for Script Recorder or Scale Agent, if you want to try Scale Agent, or if you want to try the load generation, they're all three in pilot. And we're launching a lot of integrations with DevOps testing. We're going live for GovCloud customers, and we're making our AI, UI also a lot more agentic. So you'll see a lot more changes in the way we showcase the scale testing journey. We're looking at integrations with data seeding and data masking tools and onboarding test execution providers. So this would be a great way to partner. And also we support scale testing agentic implementation. So we're looking at some integrations with Agentforce Testing Center and building more rules into our MCP. So you're able to generate your scripts and validate them end to end before you even execute them.
Okay, what is A4D? Like, I'm just curious to know.
I probably have to change that because now it's Asian Force vibes.
Okay, got it. Awesome, thank you.
Of course. I think with that, we're
Okay,
end the
super awesome. I think we're at the end of the presentation. Actually, super interesting, super fun. Got to learn a whole lot. I think when I posted about this on LinkedIn, I actually am one of those folks who realize that, oh, why do we need performance testing and skill testing on Salesforce? It's supposed to be a platform. But lo and behold, we do need that, or else we are just waiting in queues on in this digital world.
Yep.
So thanks for the presentation. I'll quickly check if there are any questions in the chat. But
Sure.
while that happens, thanks once again for participating with us. We are TestJuice and we've got AI agents for testing Salesforce. We are very actively hiring. So if there is a good QA out there listening to this, do apply. Okay, I think we have one question in chat. Can I test two different versions of code base or change set for getting a clarity?
Yeah, of course. It as we mentioned, we are the infrastructure as an offering at core. So you can build two different scripts, two different workloads. You can generate them simultaneously. We do provide that feature as well. You can do your A/B testing at scale.
Okay. That also like sparks this other question. Like when I have worked, on performance testing, scale testing kind of projects, generally you do like a soak test and then you
Mhm.
fix some things and then you do a test again.
Yeah.
So is that similar, system applied when we work with scale tests or is it different?
That could be one of the ways, Robin. So it really depends on like what kind of traffic patterns we're seeing with customers' production. So if we're seeing like suddenly burst of users like trying to enter, like Black Friday, right? Everybody's going to
Yeah.
log in at like 12 or 1 a.m. and like start buying things.
Hmm.
So it really depends on what we are expecting for their key event. But we don't stop customers from testing in any way they want. They decide the ramp up plans as long as they're making sure that it's still available and reliable, the entire infrastructure.
Okay, makes sense. I think that is the right way to go about it. Thank you. Waiting for a few more minutes before we end our session. Okay, cool. While we close out the session, Vaishnavi, how do people reach out to you? How can we, people trying this out?
People can reach out to us on LinkedIn, like you have my name, but let me also drop the website link so you're able to just get more information from our. One second. Okay, maybe I don't have that. This is our website link. If you could paste.
Yeah, I'll get that on the chat. But
Thank you.
while I'm doing that, we have another question. So, what has been the largest scaled Black Friday test you guys have done?
Um, I think I don't have the exact numbers, but it's a retail customer that is more around electronics. Like their main
Okay.
goal is to like sell a lot of electronics, and Black Friday, especially electronics, have like really big deals. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't have the numbers to share. Like I just don't have them in my mind handy
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now. But they have been the biggest Black Friday test. In fact, they're testing again last week for this Black Friday. So yeah, I'll get back to you
Okay.
with the latest numbers.
Yeah, very interesting. No, I've been very passionate about electronics during Black Friday. I can totally imagine, the customer being into electronics. Okay, I think that was the last question. We can close out 5 minutes early. Give all of us those 5 minutes back as part of Thanksgiving gift. Um, Once again, thank you so much, Vaishnavi, for being with us and helping us with the gift of knowledge. We continue the series, folks. So stay in touch. The next one is around open source. So we'll get to that when we get there. Thanks once again, Vaishnavi. All the best and happy holidays.
Thank you, Robin. It was nice
Yep. Thank you.
conversing with you.
Yep. Bye bye.